Welcome to The Big Rich Show. This podcast will focus on conversations with friends and acquaintances within the four-wheel drive industry. Many of the people that I will be interviewing, you may know the name, you may know some of the history, but let's get in depth with these people and find out what truly makes them a four-wheel drive enthusiast. So now's the time to sit back, grab a cold one, and enjoy our conversation.
Whether you're crawling the red rocks of Moab or hauling your toys to the trail, Maxxis has the tires you can trust for performance and durability. 4 wheels or 2. Maxxis tires are the choice of champions because they know that whether for work or play, for fun or competition, Maxxis tires deliver. Choose Maxxis. Tread victoriously.
Why should you read 4Low magazine? Because 4Low magazine is about your lifestyle, the four-wheel drive adventure lifestyle that we all enjoy. Rock crawling, trail riding, event coverage, vehicle builds, and do-it-yourself tech, all in a beautifully presented package. You won't find 4Low on the newsstand rack, so subscribe today and have it delivered to you. On today's episode of Conversations with Big Rich, we have Steve Sullivan. While many of you that listen to this podcast right now do not know Steve, some of you in Northern California will know him. Steve, I met Steve through Valley Off-Road Racing Association, VORRA, and found out after we started having four-wheel drive guys come out, the rock crawlers, guys like Kevin Yoder, we found out that Steve actually knew some rock crawlers. So, Steve, thank you very much for coming on board and being part of Conversations with Big Rich and discussing your history and how you got into off-road.
It's nice to be here with you, Rich. It's a sure pleasure to reconnect with you again.
Yeah, it absolutely is. You were a big influence in my life for at least 4 years, and I've considered you a friend from day one. So let's jump right in. And Steve, where were you born and raised?
I was born in Hacienda Heights, California. It's in Southern California, between Whittier and La Puente. And it down there, it seemed I was surrounded by a bunch of motorcycle racers.
Okay.
So I had the bug ever since I was just a kid. We were close enough to the beach we could ride our bicycles about a couple hours, and then we were halfway between the mountains and the beach. So we had a really good location to grow up.
And growing up in Southern California, near the beach and out there in Hacienda Heights, that was pretty rural back then, correct?
Yeah, it was. It was it was actually City of Industry.
Okay.
It was a break off of City of Industry. So it was, my dad built the freeways and whatnot. So they built the 60 freeway, Mona Freeway was right in our front yard. And prior to that, it was avocado orchards and orange groves.
Okay. Now I know where you got your influence into construction.
Yeah, without a doubt. My dad he worked for the first Jerry Brown, and they were the guys that built California. Jerry Brown was a really quirky guy. But we met him several times, and he just had a vision for California that was to make it the best railways, the best highways, the best pipelines, the best waterways, the best everything. He's a really strange guy, but he had a vision that there was like no other man ever had.
And he passed down that strangeness part of it, at least, to his son.
Yeah. I don't know. Ever since I was a kid, we would go and steal the tractors. Steal them. We'd borrow them. Me and my brother would get on the tractors and ride them around down the freeway, up the freeway, everywhere we could. And as a kid, I couldn't help to be involved in what was going on there. I'm kind of a nosy guy, but I stole my sister's bicycle and my dad's water jug, and we had lemons and my mom's sugar and that kind of stuff. We made lemonade. We'd ride up and down the freeway selling it was $0.05 a day for all you could drink to the guys working there for lemonade. So I could not help not being around all that stuff. It was just fun.
Right. And so how long did you live down there? Did you go through high school down in that area?
Yeah, I graduated. I went to Los Alamitos School, and then to Newton Junior High, and then Los Altos High School. I graduated from there in 1977. And my dad kind of gave me an ultimatum. He says, if you want to go to college, I'll pay for that. And if not, you're going to work. And then so I thought about it, and I went to Mount San Antonio College and checked it out. But it just seemed like just another screw-around day. Nobody was serious about. I didn't see anybody being serious about going to college. And I always wanted to be in construction. So the day I graduated, I jumped on my RD 350 and hauled ass to Clear Lake, California. And my dad was doing a pipeline up there. And so I went there, and the rest is history. I've worked in construction all my life.
So you drove a 350 and that's a motorcycle, from Southern California up to Clear Lake, California.
Yeah, it was great. And growing up, my brother-in-law, John Volkman, he was a road racer and that kind of stuff. And growing up, I grew up around a bunch of motorcycle guys and everything else. But we'd taken the 350 down to Daryl Bassani's shop and had pipes on it. It was really loud. I mean, it would do 120, 125 miles an hour. But it just, heading up Highway 5 it just rang my brains out going up there. But we got up there and started working the next day. So it was quite a ride, to tell you that.
So when you were in high school, did you do your own thing? Were you athletic or scholastic, or were you like in the band or theater?
No, I was a fat kid growing up. I was born at 6 months. And then so I was always overweight, and it didn't matter. I mean, you've seen the movie On Any Sunday, and we were the kids who were, riding our bicycles and doing wheelies. I could do a wheelie all the way down from Whittier Boulevard. I could go all the way down Highway 39 in several miles past Not Berry Farm. I could do a wheelie all the way from Highway 39 to the Coast Highway.
Wow.
So I was athletic, but I was just always a fat kid, because I was born early and the thyroid didn't work, and, blah, blah, blah. Okay. But, yeah. And at an early age, we had go-karts that we built, and I got a motorcycle from Jim Summers. I got his Harley Ball 100, mowed lawns with him all summer. And then, when I got into junior high, I met, Bill Fuentes, and his dad was Lou Fuentes, which was a partner of Ben Ford. And they had an off-road shop down in Long Beach with Parnelli Jones and Walker Evans, and just everybody that became everything, in the world of off-road.
Right. So you had a real heavy influence of motorcycles, but living in that Southern California, you got a total immersement into the off-road lifestyle, being around all those guys.
Yeah, it was amazing. My 18th birthday, my brother-in-law's birthday is on the 19th, and of February, mine's the 18th. And on my 18th birthday, I brought John home from the off-road shop one time, because he had Bruce Barron was working there, and Brian Bennett was racing with Bill Fuentes. And then, but we went to his house for the birthday, and there was Dick Mann, there was Bruce Barron, Bruce McDougall, there was everybody that Dave Uropkin. There was Marty Smith. There was everybody that was in cycle news at that particular time was at this birthday party. I mean, it was just there was all the crew from Midco Botako. There was Larry Saltzman, the Husky guy. There was Mitch Mays, AC Bacon. There were everybody that was on cycle news. You could open up a cycle news, and there in the front yard, the backyard, in the house, surrounded, or the keg, was everybody that was anybody.
Wow.
So it was just amazing. It's just like, wow. I had my shirt, I got autographed by everybody, and they thought I was stupid taking a nice clean T-shirt and putting felt pin on it, because they didn't think they were anybody. They were just motocross racers and flat trackers and that kind of stuff. I was just in awe as a kid.
That's totally cool. I grew up around drag racing, and at a young age, but never at a high, never at a level where the people that were that we were around ended up being, damn famous, you might say. So that's cool.
Yeah, in Southern California, that was a place that just made the world rotate. There was down the street there were drag racers and car builders and the kit pooses and I mean just guys and there was I don't know, there was Eddie Munster was around the corner and the kid from Little House on the Prairie, he lived around the corner. It was just, I mean, there were so many people that I could never get starstruck because my dad used to hang out with John Wayne and my aunt used to hang out with Robert Mitchum and people like that. And so it was just, I don't know, we never got starstruck over that stuff. They were just people. But I mean, Southern California sure made the world go round. That's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So upon moving up to Clear Lake and working, you went to work for your dad or with your dad in the construction business up there. What was that like going from Southern California up to Clear Lake? Because I know Clear Lake at the time, even now, is still sparsely populated, comparatively speaking, to Southern California.
Up in Clear Lake and Redwood Valley, Ukiah, Willits, that kind of stuff, they just had jobs up there. So we were going from town to town. It was pretty awkward being an 18-year-old kid. You really couldn't go to the bars, and you couldn't go hang around the high school. So we had to find alternative stuff to do. So I bought a dirt bike back then when I saved up some money and then started racing. And I'd raced my Harley Ball 100 years before that. Like I took a Harley Ball 100, went to the motocross track, which was pretty lame, but it was just something to do. They had Friday night motocross in Southern Cal, and then you could race about 3 or 4 days a week. But then up north, there was a couple racetracks up in Northern California that we went to, and so that became my community again. And then after a couple of broken collarbones in Virginia City and different places like that, I just go, man, I got to work and I can't really do this stuff. So I quit doing motorcycles or racing for quite a while. And then it was years later where I re-picked it up.
Okay. And did you stay in that Northern California area?
Yeah, I eventually settled down in Auburn, California. It was like it seemed like a community I kind of grew up in. It was a smaller type of community like Hacienda Heights was. I mean, not the same geographic-wise, but it just, when I got there was, I don't know, I think 6,000 people in the town, and the rest of the surrounding area was pretty sparse. So rented a house there, and that's where I kind of based myself out of. And then I would travel the world, Africa, South America, all over the place in construction and gold and diamonds and blah, blah, blah. But so then I eventually stayed within 20 miles of that Auburn, California for the rest of my life until I retired and moved down here to Mexico.
Okay, so let's talk about some of those travels to other countries. I knew that you had gone to, we had talked about this in the past when we were hanging out about South America. What countries did you spend time down in?
We went down to South America. I was in Temuco, Chile, and we did rafting down there. And then while we were rafting, just for goofing off wise, my brother-in-law, he is quite the explorer, and he did first descents around the world. So we did the Pampana River down there, and then in the meantime, we ran into some people. I went back and worked at a golf course just out of Santiago. So, and then I worked in Africa. If you ever seen the movie Blood Diamonds, we were the real guys, not Leonardo DiCaprio. We worked over there in the country in Nuku, and it was quite a. I mean, that's a story in itself. I'll tell you that much.
So you might have been running heavy equipment, but you were, let's say, making sure that you were well protected.
To say the least, over there was a whole different thing. I had a suspicion going in when we were taking apart welders, the fuel tanks and welders, and then welding in AR-15s and a bunch of ammunition and different type of guns and that kind of stuff. I figured we were up for an adventure. I wasn't really sure what we were getting into, but I knew it wasn't going to be just a standard construction job.
Wow. So I don't want to delve too much into specifics of that kind of stuff, but when you were over there in those out of the country, whether it was South America or Africa or anywhere else that you may have gone, did you continue riding motorcycles at that time, or was it just work?
Well, when I was in Africa, they we had these Toyota Land Cruiser type vehicles and that kind of stuff, and when we had a day off, we'd go out exploring in different. And then the country we were in Sierra Leone, it was pretty small. So we would go to different countries, which weren't that very far away, and see what was going on. But one day, the Dakar was running when they ran it over there, and it was running right through one of the villages. So we went out to the village, and there was one of the guys had splattered himself on a motorcycle. So we helped him. We put him in our Jeep. My Toyota Land Cruiser was like the ambulance version. It was a long wheelbase one. And then so we put him in the vehicle, and then Johan, one of the guys I was with, he was kind of an off-road enthusiast as well. And so we'd gone on this little trip together. And so he drove the Jeep, and we got him to a medic. And then I rode the motorcycle. And so then it kind of gave me the bug again. And then, but it was a pretty poor country, so there wasn't a whole lot of anything there. And then, so it wasn't until I got back home that I reconnected to start riding again.
And approximately what year was that?
When I got home, that would have been 81, because I got through Yamaha, one of the old race bikes, or works bike. I got a 81 465 that I got, Yamaha 465 that we got from, it was a works bike. My brother-in-law, he test rode and rode for Yamaha way back in the day. He'd won Daytona and blah, blah, blah. And he still had connections with Don Dudek that was the real big cheap at Yamaha. So I got a works bike, and it was just fantastic.
Nice. And that was, and then you stuck around in Northern California there, correct?
Yeah, at that point I was still living in Auburn area.
Okay.
Auburn, Newcastle area, before I moved over to just down to Granite Bay. But I went through the Yamaha was a great bike, and then I bought a Husky 430, and then I splattered myself pretty good a couple of times, and I decided with age comes a cage. So I parked the motorcycles for a while, and then I ended up buying an old two-seat Raceco from Jaime Campos, who had previously raced VORRA with it.
Okay, and that was the purple car, the V8 car.
Yeah, it was red. It was red to start with. It was a Styles race car, and it had a Volkswagen in it. And then Jaime had this bright idea, and he put a real heavy Chevy motor in it. And then I bought the car, and we went out to Prairie City one day, and it was all rainy and muddy and that kind of stuff. And me and a friend of mine, John Bias, we went out and we hit a bump and got airborne. And it was pretty soon we got our sea legs, and it was like riding a motorcycle again. So now we're riding around in this thing going crazy. And then on the way out, we got lost getting out of there. And we went by this place, and it said race next weekend. And so went back to John's. John had a offshore race boat shop. We tore the thing apart and put an LS motor in it instead of a big heavy thing, and went out there. And that's when I ran into you and everybody, and Sam Berry and Dennis and the rest of the guys, and decided to go racing.
And that's when we met, was the early years after I had bought VORRA from Ed Robinson, who's now actually been inducted into the Hall of Fame a couple of years ago, and Off-Road Motorsports Hall of Fame. You helped me big time with building Prairie City into pretty much what it is now. I know that that some of the track has been changed from what we created, but
your legacy is there.
Yeah,
yeah, your legacy is still there.
The tower.
We got the money. We went to Prairie City, did the promoting and that kind of stuff. When you first got going, you were having a rough time. You had to pay every month. Every race you had to pay the ex promoter Ed, and that kind of stuff, the deal you guys made. And so it was difficult. And at that time you were running the rock crawling and Prairie City, and it was just rough. I mean, you were running ragged 24 hours a day. So we had equipment. Sam Berry had, he had a low bed service. So he was able to bring the equipment, and we used some contacts, United Rentals and water trucks and that kind of stuff. And it was kind of funny. The first year I went out there, before I went and raced, I called Sam Berry on the phone. I looked at, I looked up VORRA and that kind of stuff. And so I tried to find somebody I could talk to and ask them about this racing thing. And so when I called down there, Heidi, his girlfriend at the time, had answered the phone. And she says, "Oh, you just think you're going to jump in a Class 1 car and go racing?" And I said, "Well, I said, I never started out on a 125 or an 80 when I was racing motorcycles. I raced open bikes." And she said, "Well, it's not the same." She was kind of mad. And so I talked to Sam, and he said, "Well, we don't run into each other out there. We're pretty good about, watching other people's vehicles and that kind of stuff." Well, that held with those guys. The first race, I go out there and I get sandwiched between Dennis and Sam, and I get spanked like a stepchild. So I ended up, the first year I got second in points the first year. Then the next year I won the overall championship. But yeah, those guys in their friendly racing was a crock of poo, I'll tell you that much. It was a lot of fun, but dang.
I just remember after you being out there that everybody started putting screens on their buggies so that they wouldn't take any of the cobbles to the helmet.
Yeah, it was kind of that LS car. I'm pretty positive I was the first guy to put a LS car in an old race car, LS motor in an old race car like that, and then because I had a Mindiol on it, and I remember. I broke a lot of stuff, but Sam Berry came into after the race one time, and he came over, and it was a heated race. I mean, him and I used to charge at it pretty hard. And I go, "Man, there's this little guy. He's going to come over and smack me or something, But Sam came over, and he had a rock. The rock was stuck in his visor or in his face shield. It melted into his face shield halfway through, and that rock came off my tires. But he said that was some of the funnest racing he ever did. He didn't even realize that thing was square between his eyes, and it was halfway through his face shield.
Wow.
Yeah. I'm down here in Mexico, and I've got a nice little shop down here and whatnot. And but I just got the face shield. When I get a second, I'll go out and take a picture of it. But I still got the face shield hanging on my wall.
Oh wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's Sam Berry signed face shield.
That's pretty cool. Sam is one of those guys from VORRA that I still communicate with. I see him every once in a while. Once or twice a year, somewhere, at some kind of an off-road event, and it's always good to see him. He's a great guy.
You know what? He is a fantastic guy, and he does a lot for his community. He has Sam Berry towing up the hill, and then he has Lodi Heavy Haul. But he just won the Best of Desert, the Class 1500. He just won that again, and I honestly be surprised if he doesn't get nominated for the Hall of Fame, because that guy's been around. He's damn near 67 years old, 68. Yep. I mean, he's getting up there in age, but he's still giving the kids a run for their money.
Oh, absolutely. He's so well prepared. One of the things that always amazed me was how he prepared for a desert race with our VORRA races, because I would go out like 3 weeks in advance and I'd lay out the track, and then I'd send out maps. And before I sent out the maps, I'd have it marked, at least with the stakes and like an arrow with a Sharpie, which way it would go. So people could go pre-run, pay attention to the arrows, on the stake. I wouldn't put the cardboard arrows up yet because those would end up disappearing with the weather and everything that, you get. But I'd find him out there, walking the race course, and he would be out in the middle of nowhere, and he'd be tying, the carpenter's tape, that little plastic marking tape, on bushes on either side, different colors to mark where passing zones were at.
Yeah, and so Sam, he rode an XR 600, and then so he would go out there. He would ride from the pit area. He would go out there, and then he'd walk maybe a mile or two, go back to his bike and get on it, and then go again. He would do. He would use his little ribbon, his little green ribbon, and you had to know it was there to spot it. And then so I started moving his ribbons for him. That's how I won. That's how I beat him out of a desert race. I moved his ribbons, and it kind of screwed him up. Sam has a memory that's just amazing, because you can ask him about a trail or a track or a road, and he'll know it. You know, it's kind of like I am down here in Mexico, because when he came down here to race, these roads are something I travel every day. But so I moved his ribbons for him, and it kind of got him off of his game. And that's the only time I ever beat him in a desert race. I mean, he was a hard one to beat, but you guys had a really huge race one time, and I won, but not without the help of a lot of people. But yeah, I moved his ribbons and kind of threw him off his game.
That's awesome. So
I couldn't beat that guy in the desert fair. I mean, he just was too fast for me.
Well, what always surprised me is that he would go race Best in the Desert, and then that night, you know, would leave there after the race, come up and race the VORRA race, and do the same thing. And
yeah,
he's just amazing.
That guy. I mean, you talk about a love of racing. I mean, I loved it, and we were actually pretty lucky that we lived fairly close to the track. But I was always working somewhere. I was out in Texas, I was in Arizona, I was up in Oregon. I mean, I was around the world working, and I had to get back there, even though my house is only 20 minutes from the track. I sometimes had to, travel thousands of miles to get there. But Sam would race the best desert stuff in one car, and then he'd bring out his short course car and a 10 car, and race every race that he could out there. He was just, you're never going to find somebody that loves racing more than that guy.
True. So let's talk about some of those times, especially at Prairie City, because those are the ones to me that were the most memorable, because everybody was, in a tight enclosed area. One of the things I loved about the desert part of the racing was going out. I had somebody to run the flags. I had somebody to marshal the event, or was the race steward at the start-finish line. I could go out in the race course to an area and watch, and then move and go to another area. And some of those loops that we put in there were 80, 85 mile long. And so it was really fun for me to do that. But at the short course, everybody was all together.
It was, the short course was fun. I struggled out in the desert with the car that I had, the CVs, and just the whole combination of stuff was pretty rough. The car it was never made to do what we're trying to make it do. So in the desert I struggled with. And then so at Prairie City, if I broke down, I mean, it was only, it was 1,000 feet away to the parts truck. So for me, it was a lot funner. I was better at short course than I was in the desert by far. So it was super, super fun. And the way that you had the course set up was great. We had, we got the contract from the government to build the track and the tower and that kind of stuff. So that was a great accomplishment on your part for helping get that done. Otherwise, it still would have just been, just a piece of dirt. And then we did the track. And in retrospect, with all those boulders sitting there, we should have saved those boulders instead of burying those, because that became now it's the Ulster 4 track. And I don't know, hindsight's, 70-30, I tell you.
Oh,
but
absolutely.
It was super fun building the track, and then everybody says, "Oh, if you didn't build the track, you wouldn't win." And it's like, well, I remember me and Tim Compton and Sam Berry, we started the race backwards and let everybody go.
Yep.
we let everybody go half a lap in front of us, and next thing you know, the race was on. But that was always fun. I forgot about Tim there for a bit, but Tim was fun to race with, but it was scary. His car was that little thing, and I was always afraid, you know, I mean, at the speed we were running, to bang into him. But somehow or another, him and Sam and I, we just managed to stay out of each other's way.
Yep. There was some open wheel bumping going on there. I remember one of the things that during the races that I'd always take the hot pit re-entry corner so I could control people coming onto the race course when in the traffic on the race course. And we had that hairpin turn right after the jump. So if you took the big stadium jump, which, you know, was pretty big jump, and you could go straight into the hot pit, or you'd turn right and keep turning right until you did a horseshoe, a really tight hairpin. And man, guys would get into it, especially on the first lap. You know, there'd always be like one person that would be out front and they'd have a clean corner. And then everybody else, I kept telling everybody else, just hold your line. Even if you have to go wide around the corner, don't stack up in that first turn. Yet, what would happen almost every race?
It was something. I was lucky that the car that I had, nobody could beat the thing off the line. I was pretty lucky, and I usually get to the turn first. But Sam was right there, Tim was right there, Dennis was right there. Harley was right there. Everybody was right. I mean, everybody was right there, but there was kind of a pecking order. But I mean, I could hear the banging and tires and that kind of stuff behind me. I mean, it was a definite sound where everybody was trying to get to the right turn. And, but, you know, I mean, it was a needle in a haystack. Not all the cars would fit at once, but I was lucky to pretty much most of the time get a hole shot and avoid all that issue. But I remember one time the car, I hit the off switch and it died and everybody passed me. And then a couple down the hill, a couple jumps later, I think it was Mike Lerner's car. Anyway, his car died when I was going over a jump, and I jumped over the top of him. My skid plate went over, knocked his antenna off, and we went right over the top of him. But there was some really tight racing there. It was fun, and it became the Class 1 show there. When we'd have 10 or 12 cars was just something. I mean, there was nobody sitting in the pits. Everybody was lined up against the fence to see what kind of BS we were going to throw at them that day. It was fun.
Yeah, it was where most of the carnage happened on that turn one would be the limited classes, like the 9 cars and the 7 trucks.
Yeah, the seven trucks. Those guys were some hard chargers. But back in the day, Patty Hoyos, she was Kurt built her a good truck, and she was a great driver. And I think only one time I saw a day in her truck. But for the most part, the 7 trucks going to that turn, they had a handful of them, which I guess they called T group later. But those guys just had a heck of a time getting through there.
Yeah, there was always a lot of bumping going on there, and it was fun. So remember, one of my good memories out there is that I had asked Kurt LeDuc to come up and take a look at the racetrack. I had met him out he went out to rock crawl at an event I put on or helped put on in Pennsylvania, which he won. It was his only rock crawl event he competed in. He won it, and he said he was having a car built by Shannon Campbell, and at that point he canceled the car being built and said, you know what, I'm 1 for 1. I'm perfect in it, you know, in wins now in a rock crawl, so I can just keep racing. So we invited him out to take a look at the track. You know, we were trying to attract some of those bigger name drivers to come out and race with us. And do you remember that day?
Yeah, without a doubt. And I ran into him down here in Mexico at one of the Bajas. He had a Jeep Cherokee, and he was just invincible on that thing. But he's just a super nice guy, you know. I mean, it's kind of funny about all these guys from him to Bob Gordon, Ricky Johnson, even Robbie Gordon. Now I see him and his kid Max down here, and we buried the hatchet. after that, Laughlin thing. But they're all just normal people, And when he came up there, I remember we all went and had some lunch at the Post Motel and that kind of stuff. And I never forget it. I mean, I wanted to have a cocktail, and he was drinking iced tea, and it's like, well, off-road racers don't drink. What is wrong with this guy? But he came up and did some laps at the track and whatnot, and then the dude from Amsoil, Royal Purple, brought his core truck there, and it broke. The track was just the dirt was too tough for that style of vehicle. True. Yeah, I mean, their tracks are a lot more groomed and whatnot, but the vehicles, that was, I don't know, I thought it was normal dirt. I just thought it was normal, but apparently it wasn't. But yeah, their trucks were they're a little bit different with the ruts and I don't know. I thought the tracks were groomed great, but apparently not,
Well, the track was groomed. The problem is that all that soil there in that area is got a lot of cobble, whether it's broken or, and when I say cobble, it's the river rock. And, that area was just like, I don't know if they used that area to dump everything when they dredged out the rivers, to make them navigable or whatever, but there's a lot of cobblestone out there, and even though there was dirt over the top of it, every time we'd grade it and rip it, and you always did a good job with the tractor out there, it would, we had to have people walk the track because it would always pull up rock.
Yeah, that area, I've done a bunch of homework in Tykert and Granite, and everybody's out there. There was an old gold field, but from the American River right there, in Folsom, that riverbank that's on the north side of the river there,
right,
all the way to Sloot House, there's another riverbank, and that apparently at one time was a river.
Oh.
So, yeah, it was, and then so look at the condensed version of what that 22-mile riverbank to riverbank was. Is now just down to what the American River is, but at one point that was all river, and all that area is gold bearing. Tykert, I worked for those guys forever, and when I was working in Africa and South America and that kind of stuff, doing gold and diamond mines, we set up a circular jig for Tykert, and they're pulling gold out of everywhere down there, all the way up. They have conveyor belts that go from right there off of basically downtown Sacramento, all the way up to Lotus.
Okay.
So they got 30 miles of underground conveyor belts, still gold mining. But all that area is pretty rich. But I did some homework about it when we were working out there, and apparently the geography of that was a riverbank right there at American River, and it went out to Slough House.
Wow, didn't realize that. Okay. I figured it was all just carted out there or something and dropped. But yeah, that makes total sense.
Well, that was I forget the name of the guy's name. It was a ranch earlier, McGill's. It was McGill's ranch earlier, and then he was letting people go out there and run around on the ranch and ride motorcycles and that kind of stuff. And then somehow or another, the state got it, and then it became Prairie City. Right. But it was McGill's Park. Yeah, it was McGill's before that, and they had that's where Magoo and Kenny McKenzie and a bunch of the northern greats, started riding out there.
Yeah, well, that's the Prairie City. Is the home of the big Hangtown Classic motocross race, and then
Dirt Diggers went up.
Yeah, Dirt Diggers. That's right. And then we inherited the area. Robinson had been running out there for years, and then because of the ferry shrimp, the track area just got smaller and smaller and smaller until it was the size. I mean, we were able to pull out like 2.1 mile track out of that place, which was incredible, I thought, for the amount of space that we had.
It was. I'll tell you what. There was people have been riding out there forever. And then when Ed was running the races, I was riding out of Prairie City one time and I saw the buggies, and it didn't dawn on me to go over there and take a look. I was kind of caught up in my own little world. But when we first got out there, when I got out there, when I was playing around with my buggy and whatnot, we went out and rode around to there. It was all muddy and mess and whatnot, and not groomed or graded or anything else. But I mean, there was just roads and trails and stuff going everywhere on that property. And then finally, when you got there, you brought out your banners and that kind of stuff. And you said, okay, here's what I want. And it was, man, I'll tell you what, from just out there pleasure riding and goofing off to race day with the banner you had over the start finish line, with all the, you know, the I don't know, used car banner tape that you had out there. It made you feel special. It was like Hangtown. It made you feel like, dang, man, it's race day, you know? I mean, it was really festive events out there. It was the best time of my life.
I'm glad to hear that. Like I said, I always liked it out there because of the, you know, everybody was hanging out together. The pit area was more condensed than at our desert races. So everybody got to, you know, it was that camaraderie being built with the people that wanted it. I mean, of course, there's always going to be people that won't hang out with anybody else, or will only hang out with, you know, 3 of their favorite people, that kind of thing. But, you know, it was some good times out there.
Well, the best part about it was open pits. And if you think about it, I mean, there was the Cardanoways, those guys were something to reckon with. I mean, Dave and Dennis were both, I mean, showstoppers. Those guys, they'd put on a show like there's no tomorrow. And then there's Sam Berry, Mike Lerners. You had, what's his name from Harrow's? John Harrow would come race. You had a bunch of guys from Southern California that come up and race. But nobody was above anything. But the best part was the open pits where you could walk around from race car to race car, from team to team. And that's where I ran into Miguel and Renee Soto. We had going into one of your Halloween races, but we were making carnitas, and we always had food for whoever wanted it. We'd make carnitas. We did roasted pigs out there. We did all kinds of stuff, but we had open pits. So one day these Mexican guys come running through, and they had the whole family, and the mom looked familiar, but I didn't recognize the boys, Renee and Miguel. Anyway, the next day the mom brings a Polaroid, and it turns out in 1972 I'd met these guys down here in Estero Beach, actually Corona Beach, but it's right across from Estero Beach in Mexico, and they eventually moved to Sacramento, and they heard there was off-road races, and like every good Mexican, they off-road races were going, and those guys came down, and their mom recognized me. They didn't. But their mom told them who I was. I was the kid that had my Harley Baja 100 that we were riding up down the beach on back in 72.
Wow.
So we reconnected. In fact, they have my Class 1 race car that was started by Cardonaway. They have it down here, and they're second in the points right now for the record series down here, so the race car is still living.
Nice. That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, it amazes me. But, yeah, that to having that open pit area where the fans could walk through freely, you know, and go and check out the race cars and see the drivers and get T-shirts and that kind of stuff. I mean, it was something. Even after the first season, I would be at a grocery store in Granite Bay, and there's a kid tugging on Dad's jeans. It's like, Dad, that's him. And it's like, are you Steve Sullivan? It's like, yeah. He goes, can I get an autograph? And it's like, what? Autograph for what? And it's like, autograph for what? He goes, we watched you race, you know. But it was something. It was a lot of fun out there, that's for sure.
So you're down in Baja now, and
yeah,
you went down there for health reasons, but you know, and you've retired. You're not doing the heavy equipment anymore, I assume, and you're getting your feet back into off-road racing down there, aren't you?
Yeah, what happened was I worked in pipeline and demolition all my life, and then one day up north, my breathing got bad, so I went down to the doctors, and there's just a percentage of air you have to breathe, otherwise they're not letting you out of the hospital. You have to get a 90%, and I was below that, and so I was in the hospital for a few days, and I got better, and then I went back to work, and I did a demolition job down at Navy base hospital thing down in Oakland. My breathing got worse and worse and worse, and I went back to the hospital, and they fix you up and just send you, it's a revolving door. They, you pay your health care and they fix you up, and then they send you out and you come back sicker. Anyway, it got really bad. And then I wasn't going to get out of the hospital. And then so I was in there for a couple of weeks. And so I just said, okay, that's it. I'm pulling the plug. I'm just not going to keep doing this revolving door thing,
Right.
So I always wanted to come down to Mexico. We have a lot of friends down here, and just the lifestyle and everything about it. I have my motorcycles. I can go do my dual sport thing. I have my little dog. I throw him in my bag, and we take off on my BMW. I got a Dakar rally bike, and we take off and run to Cabo or San Quintin or wherever, San Felipe, wherever we want to go, we just go. And I got a little boat and go fishing. But then I got down here, and about a year later, all of a sudden my breathing was super bad. And it's like, this is crazy. I was sat down and I couldn't get up. And it's like, shit. So I went down to the doctors, and my doctor here, she told me, hey man, get to California now. So I went to California. They put me in the hospital for 14 days at the La Jolla at a script center there. Then I got out, and about an hour later, the little breathing machine they gave me wasn't keeping up. So I went back to the hospital another 15 days. And so they told me, it's a year ago right now, they told me that I was in there at Halloween day. They came in and they said, yeah, we suspect you're going to be on hospice by Thanksgiving and dead by Christmas. You have terminal fibrosis. So down here, there's a doctor, Rod Hall had been to him, and Roger Norman, and a bunch of people that I'd heard some pretty good success stuff. So I went to that guy and got his stem cell stuff. And so his stem cells worked, and I don't have to have the oxygen or anything else like that. And so now I get to have a life. But it's amazing, where in the United States, they threw their hand up and said, oh, you're going to die. And down here, you can get treatment, So I have a lot of gratitude for what Mexico has been able to afford me.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So before we go any more about Baja, I want to touch on the guys that you met that were rock crawling in Northern California. I mentioned it a little bit, Yoder and that group.
Gomez,
yep,
Raul and his brother.
Talk about how you met those guys, or what kind of experiences got you there.
Well, Kevin Yoder, there was Tony. There was Tony and let me think, and the whole Holland group. Remember SD Holland and that whole group? Those guys would come out and go camping and whatnot, and they bought the sister car, the single seater to the Styles car.
Okay.
That I had. So anyway, all those guys out there, they felt like they had a connection to the car, so they'd come out there and be camping and carrying on. Raul Gomez, I didn't know him, but I knew who his construction company was, but I didn't know him personally till he came out and was kind of checking it out. But Kevin Yoder, he was a wild man, and there was Joel Swanson, Kevin Yoder, and all those guys, the rock crawling guys, and I thought those guys were completely insane. I've never seen I've never seen people go and hillbilly glue some big motor in a 1-ton 4-wheel drive crap together and put a seat in it and go bash their heads against the wall. You guys are ridiculous. But the connection that Kevin Yoder and I had, we were both having transmission problems because mine was an LS motor with a turbo 400 and I had a Ford 9-inch stacked, and it was all in reverse because I had a mid-engine car. But we had problems with our transmissions, and we tried ADP and a bunch of different guys around town until we found this guy, Steve, that was out there by Camp Far West. Well, our transmissions, we had similar motors, about 600 horsepower motors, 700 horsepower motors, something like that. And then, but our transmissions, we were able to go to this guy and figure out what was going on. And then, so that was, we kept in really close contact because it eventually got to the point where he ran a whole season without ever taking the transmission out. And then I finally got mine to do the same thing. So that was kind of our connection. And besides Joel Swanson and Tony and, all the rest of those guys, but the rock crawlers with Raul Gomez, those guys stepped up the game when Shannon Campbell and everybody else, when rock crawling really got to be a recognized sport, and that's where you were pushing that forever and ever and ever, running around the country doing that, you know. And then so you were like the pioneer for rock crawlers back in the day, you know, putting on your events. So now it's become just a huge event. I see rock crawlers down here all the time. They just had the Baja 1000. I see those you know, the 4400 cars heading north and that kind of stuff. And some look like they're brand new, and some look like they had a yard sale. So the rock crawling mentality is just a whole different thing. Those guys, they build the toughest of the toughest vehicles, and they do some of the craziest things. I went to your event up in Donner, and I watched those guys do stuff, and I go, how is that physically possible? How can you make a car do that, you know? And I don't know, I have a lot of respect for those guys. I mean, for their knowledge, what they build, and, you know, most all those guys are all hands-on guys. They're not like the bunch of off-road guys where they go and buy $1 million vehicle. Those guys are in the garage working on their stuff. So they know every piece and nook and cranny of their car. So when it breaks, they can go out there and repair it, you know?
Exactly.
But it's the laws of gravity don't apply to those guys. And it's all half the time when you're looking, you watch a video and you go, oh, somebody photoshopped that. But if I wasn't out there at some of your events to go and see what the heck was going on, I wouldn't believe what those guys can do. The Gomez brothers, they've got a 2-truck, and it's a spec truck, like a trophy truck. And those guys have had some hard luck, but those guys have brought a lot of class to the sport. You know, I mean, they know how to do it right. They have the money and the budget, and they have the dedication to it. But, you know, the rock crawling stuff, they've all done really well. All the brothers and the kids have done really well with that kind of stuff, and their side-by-side accomplishments as well. But I still don't know how the rock crawling guys can make a car do that. I look at that and I go, that's not even possible. It blows my mind.
Well, you know, the rock crawling it's completely like opposite, I guess you would say, of what you do to set up a car to go fast. You know,
yeah.
the way the setup is, you know, for the anti-squat and all that kind of stuff, you know, the unsprung weight, you know, you get into that type of the design, and it's pretty much opposite where the four-wheel drive guys, I think, have really made an impact in off-road racing was the fact that with four-wheel drive, it was the factory stuff, you know, the Broncos, the straight axle, you know, Chevys, that kind of thing, the trucks, 8 trucks and 3s. And then, you know, the four-wheel drive, the only thing that ever worked somewhat well was the Landshark. And,
yeah,
you know, they just really never pushed that thing hard, and nobody wanted to spend the time trying to develop it. So the off-road guys would say, you know, oh, four-wheel drive will never hold up. Well, then we got into, especially with IFS, or the independent suspension, not IFS, but just independent itself. So the guys like that started early with that, say like Shannon Campbell or Rick Dermo, they worked, you know, really hard to come up with something that would survive with four-wheel drive to be able to do King of the Hammers. And now the top trophy trucks, I mean, 1 and 2 this year in Baja were four-wheel drive trophy trucks.
Yeah. Years ago, people were doing four-wheel drive stuff, and they just had a hard time making it live. A lot of the stuff, believe it or not, a lot of the stuff that people have learned about off-road racing, a lot of the things, the ideas, technology, and fasteners and way of cooling down things came from offshore boats. So out of Long Beach, California, there was I worked for Strop Off-Road and for Ben Ford and that kind of stuff. And those guys were always down the road. There was a machine shop down there that did stuff for they call them Matchbox boats back in the day. But anyway, offshore racing, Penhalls were offshore boat guys and whatnot. So the horsepower, the cooling system, fasteners, and things like that got adapted into off-road. the 4-wheel drive thing was just rough until the rock crawler guys came around. You had the core series that had 2 and 4-wheel drive stuff, and you got a 1,000 horsepower truck. The 2-wheel drives now are basically uncontrollable, so it takes the 4-wheel drive stuff. But it's taken all these years, probably 45 years of being around off-road and this kind of stuff to make a 4-wheel drive 1,000 horsepower truck live,
Right.
So it's pretty amazing. The 2-wheel drive trucks are fast and fun, but the 4-wheel drive trucks now, those guys are. The 2-wheel drive trophy truck is going to be a thing of the past if you want to be a contender. That's for sure.
I agree. I agree completely.
The rock crawling guys have had a whole lot to do with that. When those guys first got going, and you remember Rubicon and that kind of stuff, and Bob Rogie and that type thing back in the day when the Rubicon was a Rubicon. Now you could take a Pinto through it, but back in the day, things got bigger. It's like all of a sudden you add horsepower, then you break a drive line, so you put in a bigger drive line, and so it's always the car chasing the horse. And but with the rock crawler, those guys just said, okay, here's what breaks, here's what the horsepower is, and here's what we're going to do. And those guys have had a fantastic influence in all of off-road, So, even with the Ford Raptor being built, now the Toyotas and with their trucks and Nissans down here in Mexico, they got Nissans that were basically looked like a core truck. You can't get them in the United States, but they're here. So, but the rock crawlers, without those guys, the influence would still be probably 20 years behind.
Yeah, I'd like to think so. With especially in that trophy truck class, with the that unlimited truck class, you might say, being able to go to the independent front suspension, 4-wheel drive, hold the horsepower, and the abuse that those trucks take. You can't go as fast as you need to go unless you've got 30 plus inches of travel, and it's amazing what those guys are doing. Especially in the desert racing part of it, because you can go wider because you don't have to stuff it into rock crevices like you do at King of the Hammers.
Well, I'll tell you what's really amazing is those trucks. Kurt LeDuc, one time when I was going to build the newer car, Kurt LeDuc and I asked him, what's the real deal with suspension and that kind of stuff? And he said, if you got 18 inches of usable travel, he said, that's all you need. And I said, in the desert, he says, I'm going to tell you this one last time. If you have 18 inches of usable travel, then you're going to be okay. And I thought about that. And so when I built my new car, we used the LS motor because those things are just bulletproof, the automatic transmission. And we had 26 inches of, full wheel travel. But the truth about it was, with the droop and everything else, it turned out we had 18 inches of travel. And that's the car that I wanted to do your series with. But you can't watch a video with these trucks and then just go, that's pretty cool. And you see them going over the bumps until you're standing out in Zoo Road, or you're down in San Quintin and you're in a wash, and you're standing in a wash where the whoops are 6 foot deep. And then you see a trophy truck, 1,000 horsepower, 4-wheel drive truck going through there, at 100 miles an hour. And you just wonder, how can that happen? It's something. It really is something to watch.
Yeah. I right after I bought VORRA, I didn't know much about off-road racing. And so I asked the people that were around me what I needed, what do I need to know? Especially Sam Berry. He was a wealth of knowledge for me. So, we talked, and he goes, you need to come down to a race. So I went down to Barstow and helped his crew do their thing. I just kind of more watched what was going on. I want to say I helped, but I really wasn't much help. And what amazed me is watching, there was the pit road where you could come off the racetrack, get to your pit, and then go back on, or the guys could stay, on the racetrack. So
Right.
Standing there along the racetrack as close as I could and watching these trucks come down that road, and you're talking about, the holes that they were digging. I mean, what amazed me is that each one of those rear tires on those trucks were, basically shoveling out a wheelbarrow load of dirt and displacing it every time it really touched the ground. And it was, the amount of wheel travel and the body on those things, you could see the guys' heads in there, and they may be shaking a little bit, but not what you would expect. And the wheels are just going like, they look like that everything was just going to fly apart. They didn't,
Yeah.
but the bodies were just so level and so smooth compared to the violence of the wheel travel. I was so impressed, and so then after the race, I walked out there into where some of those holes were at and standing in them, and literally they were 3 to 5 feet deep. And I'm just going, I was blown away by how fast they were traveling, with that wheel travel and through those holes. And, I at that point, then I knew that, I knew what the difference was between rock crawling and desert racing.
Yeah, they're both are amazing in different ways. Like I said, the rock crawling guys, I went to that event, Donner, and then I've been to several since. But I just watch those things, and it's like they defy all gravity and anything you could have ever thought you learned, as well as the off-road stuff. And then, the trophy trucks are kind of cool and whatnot, but there's the heroes like Salazar and Dennis down here with the Class 11 guys. Those guys have got, better than stock, V-dubs. But it really amazes me. I've been in a race where I was limping at a Baja 500, and a guy broke his transmission. I ran out of gas, so we traded tow strap to pull him to the next pits and for the gas that he could give me. But up until that point, I just was having a bad day, and flat tires and everything else. And here came a Class 11 car, and I was behind this guy in his dust and didn't know what he was, had no idea what it was. And I finally caught up to it, and it was a Volkswagen. And this was just a Mexican going to get some milk on a Sunday. It had nothing to do with the race. And the guy was hauling the mail. It's like, here I am in a Class 1 car, and I'm, sucking behind a guy that's got his family in the car, just going to get some tacos on a Sunday. It was, I just felt like a real fool. That was for sure. But yeah, there's all the vehicles. All the different classes. They've got some stuff going on. My brother did really good with a 72 Bronco that we built, and then now he's got a 66 Ford. He's won every NORA race that he's been in with the thing, and he's making quite a name for himself, the El Santo Racing. But every one of the vehicles, if they're driven for their potential, they're pretty amazing what they can accomplish.
Very true. Very true. So let's talk about Baja and you living down there. You're back around the off-road racing. You're meeting people. Talk about some of the guys that you've run across.
There's right now, I built kind of a little compound. It's basically one big garage, and I have my motorhome on one side, and it's got a bathroom and kitchen, and I got smokers and barbecues and all kinds of stuff. So when I go fishing, that I can, come back and smoke, and I get pizza ovens and everything else. I just love to cook. But right now there's Kevin Johnson. He won a couple of Baja races, and they have a Ride Baja insurance company and ridebaja.com. And they do side-by-side trips and motorcycle trips. So we work with those guys. And then I see the McMillans down here quite a bit. I have Robbie Gordon. Larry Rossler has always been a hero to me. When I was a kid, I was racing in Virginia City, and I splattered myself and broke my collarbone and got wadded up pretty good. But Larry and his wife at the time, he's always, since I was a kid, he's not that much older than me, but he's just always an accomplished guy. But I see him quite a bit, and now he's one of the most winningest guys in the Baja. He just Ironman the 1000 and had transmission problems, and it was cool to see Robbie put him on the strap and sacrificed, his standings to make sure that Larry was able to get to the finish line. So, but there's all kinds of guys down here. Dan McMillan, Mark McMillan. At the NORA race, we sat and had mimosas in Bay of LA. But everybody's just, there's nobody too big for their britches, because you're going to be out there racing. These guys are going to be out in the dirt. And you don't want to have any enemies, because you don't want to be sitting there, for 24 hours waiting for your crew to get to you. You're going to have to rely on another racer to give you a hand, and whether it's a U-joint or a bolt or, strapped to the next pit. But in town, there's a Cameron Steele comes through town quite a bit with his tours. It's no different than when I was a kid on my 18th birthday with Cycle News. Now you could look at Dusty Times or any of the off-road sites, and these guys are here every day. So, every day they're doing tours. Every day they're doing trips and that kind of stuff. So a lot of different tours. There's Justin Strong, a guy with a small tour company. He's out of Tecate area or Mexicali area. But I go and cook for these tours. There's Ryan McCaslin's a kid going to school up in Chico. He does a lot of the photography and whatnot. Mike Hardaway, there's guys here every day, and I usually go out and cook, or I'll smoke a bunch of fish, and I'll meet people down at Estero Beach or San Quintin or whatever it is. But there's just guys here every day.
Awesome. Sounds like a great life. Next time I'm down there, we are going to stop by.
Yeah, come on by. It's the place that I built. I live in this place called Cypress. If you the second flag, the military base, I'm just right up the street from there. But it's a dirt road, chickens running around, dogs and cats and that kind of stuff. And I have fantastic neighbors. The next door guy, the guy next to me, has a radio store, and he does surveillance cameras and that kind of stuff. And then all up and down the street, there's just fantastic people. So a lot of times I'll just be barbecuing for no reason to barbecue, but I just go knock on doors and start giving away smoked chickens and beef and stuff, So I got a fantastic life down here. I just love my neighbors, and I love it down here. And any given day, you can go down to the boulevard, and you'll see chase trucks and race trucks and speed trucks and beef jerky, just any given day. And because people they don't plan their tours around a weekend. They plan their tours around what the hotel reservations they can get and things like that. So it doesn't matter if it's a Monday or a Thursday. There's activity down here all the time, and the fishing stuff too. So guys come down and they want to go do a side-by-side tour, and then they want to go fishing. So there's boats out in Ensenada here. My buddy with Game Fisher, he's got a 50-foot boat that's just badass, and he's a great captain. And then I got my little boat. It doesn't have all the luxuries of the big guy boat does, but we can go catch fish. So we drag her from here to Bay of LA to San Quintin and that kind of stuff, and it's easy to get around. So it's just a good life and good people.
That's awesome. You deserve it.
Well, one of these days I'm going to get in fact, I was thinking about it. I want to buy one of those little mini trucks.
Right.
Like a key truck, and I want to make it look like a Dakar rally truck. So, I want to put a pizza oven and some barbecue stuff in the back. So I'll build a box to the back. So at 100 yards, I want it to look like a full Dakar rally truck. But when you get up, close to it, the clown car, in fact, you and I probably wouldn't sit in the thing together. We would. We probably couldn't close the doors because the cab is so small. But I want an all-wheel drive one, air conditioning. But I want to be able to pop the sides out in the back. But I want to have my pizza oven and another barbecue and stuff in there, and a little refrigerator and blah, blah, blah. But I want to go and do on-site catering for the tour groups. And everybody's up for it. I go and cook anyway, but I just want that truck. It'd be cool as hell to have a truck like that. And in Port Smith, Texas, and different places out by where you're at, they got those little trucks and I need a license plate and whatnot. So I'm thinking about coming out that way to look at a truck and probably, drag one home.
Well, if you do, absolutely let me know ahead of time so that we can make sure that we're around. And
yeah,
love to see you again. It's been way too long.
You bet, buddy. It's good to hear your voice again. And I'll tell you, we had some good times back in the day. You kept VORRA alive. when it was just going to go by the wayside. And then now VORRA's BJ
Yep.
has got it, and they're doing pretty good. They got a car count that I wish we would have had back in the day, but somehow or another it's that the cycle of life things. There was a lot of cars around at the time, but people didn't have a disposable income. So, it's just kind of luck of the draw. But BJ is doing good with it, and it's good that you kept it alive. Otherwise, it would have been gone.
Right. I see BJ at the Off-Road Motorsports Hall of Fame induction dinner every year now. Then his wife has competed at the Rebel Rally, which we staff as well. So we get to see them. And, it's good to see those kids grow up and now are doing what they love. It's really good that is still around and available to them.
It was, back in the day, it was kind of cliquish and that kind of stuff, and people either liked me or they hated me. And then, but BJ and those guys, they were just pretty young kids back in the day, and I don't know, I kind of thought with their passion for what was going on there, that somehow or another that they would end up with it. And I actually have you remember the pre-runner that BJ had, the Toyota?
Yes.
That was what was his? It's on the tip of my tongue. What was the other guy that got it? Shannon Harwell. Shannon had built this Toyota pre-runner, and then BJ got it, and then Laura's, I believe, father or somebody passed away, and they had a 4-wheel drive version of this. So I bought this pre-runner from BJ before I came down here, and this thing is it's just been just fun as heck. I have a place in La Bocana, and the road's kind of challenging getting there, but my brother-in-law and his friends come down with their Raptors and do trips and that kind of stuff. But that thing has 150,000 miles on it, and I would say 90,000 miles are on Mexican dirt roads.
Nice.
Yeah. So, but dude, it's good talking to you, and I'm glad you're doing well. But one of these days, maybe you'll be on the Off-Road Hall of Fame for your contributions to the whole thing.
Well, I don't know about that, but my legacy, I think, is people connecting to other people. Doing the events like I've done, whether it's been the rock crawling, the desert racing, 4-wheel drive off-road racing, the short course racing, whatever, it's bringing people together that never would have met otherwise.
Well, I got to tell you, you brought the rock crawling guys out to Prairie City and had their own class, and those guys were pretty fun to watch on a short course. And then after that, John Goodby and those guys are still keeping everything alive with doing their rock crawling series and with the VORRA series and whatnot. But yeah, you put the two sports together there, and without that, Dusty Times was not covering what they were doing. But since it was incorporated into off-road racing, that then all of a sudden the sport just blew up and went crazy. Because
Right.
after that, then they had King of Hammers and that kind of stuff. So without your influence, it probably wouldn't have had the popularity that it does today.
Well, that's nice of you to say, but like I said, I think the biggest thing, in my opinion, is bringing people together.
There you go.
I never would have known the people I know in off-road if it wasn't for taking over VORRA and then, meeting you and Sam Barry and traveling to Mexico with BFG and to, different races like the Laughlin race and Barstow and stuff with you and Sam Barry and, and then getting involved with like Pistol Pete, and doing the racing down there and Mike Schaefer, it's just, it's almost full circle in the off-road world. The only thing I haven't had a presence in, or, where I feel like I'm lacking, knowledge is probably in the 2-wheel drive. But, now that I'm friends with Jimmy Lewis and work with him every year for, almost 2 weeks, I've got to, I've got to learn about the two-wheel drive section of it, and then, knowing Cameron Steele and stuff. So it's, it's been a pleasure for me to be able to be around all these people and, different walks of life, but all with the same interest, and that's, being off-road.
Yeah, it's an amazing community, that's for sure. So I'm pretty lucky meeting Sam and you and Mike Lerners and Heidi and even today still, I through Facebook and whatnot, you can kind of stay connected to people and that kind of whatnot. But Kurt and Patty Hoyos, Patty had a huge impact on my racing. I mean, she was just so inspirational, and Kurt was just a quiet guy. He'd just go and make the trucks and do his thing and whatnot. But Patty was a real inspiration. I really enjoyed the heck out of her.
Yeah, they did everything they could to make sure they were at the races. Whether they, whatever challenges life throws at you, when you do everything you can to still be involved with your passion outside of how you make your money, it's that really shows character, I think.
Yeah, even with Billy Manifold, that guy, that was something, for a guy being in a wheelchair. I mean, just all the people that you get to meet, their day-to-day life is one thing, and then you get to the track, and there it is. You're racing. It didn't matter. I mean, there was people that had a donut delivery service that were able to go racing, and so I don't know how many donuts it takes, but they apparently sold a lot of donuts.
True enough.
They might have been close to a police station. I don't know, but but all of a sudden, you get out to the racetrack and it's I don't know, just the passion for this stuff is just, it's an addiction you can't get rid of. That's for sure.
True. Well, Steve, I want to say thank you so much for coming on board here with Conversations and having this talk. It's been a long time. We used to have talks like this when we'd be out at the track and or having lunch or dinner someplace, and whether it was out in the desert or at Prairie City, it was always great hanging out with you. And somehow we gotta figure out how to do it more often. Yeah,
it's just life takes its turns, and then I'll either get up that way. I have some friends over in Bandera that I try to get out to see. So I don't really have a schedule anymore. But like I said, I might get up there to Fort Smith area and look at those trucks and whatnot. But if you're coming this way, just give me a heads up, and we'll find time.
Sounds good. I appreciate it. Thank you, buddy.
Have a good day. Say hello to the wife for me.
All right, will do. Bye-bye.
All right, buddy. Bye.
If you enjoy these podcasts, please give us a rating. Share some feedback with us via Facebook or Instagram, and share our link among your friends who might be like-minded. Well, that brings this episode to an end. Hope you enjoyed it. We'll catch you next week with Conversations with Big Rich. Thank you very much.